What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Nalo Kicking Knowledge. Today, we'll be taking a look at placements that force independence or growing up within life. So, let's get into it. The insight I want to give to that, y'all, is, as I'm reading and I'm giving you guys advice on how to deal with your transits, I'm always taking into account what your natal north node is and where the current north node is, because that's the destiny point. It's almost like the destination in a sense, okay, where sun is really the journey of discovery and embodying. And then the north node gives a particular destination, things to cultivate. The cool thing is, like, when you look at it in the collective sense, you see how wherever the north node is, along with the outer planets, how it really affects society and where it pushes us in terms of liberation. I never forget, during the north node in Cancer transit, there were so many of the prominent female entertainers in whatever realms now gained a strong ascension during the time where the north node was in Cancer. Okay, so one of the first things to know, any time the north node is transiting somewhere and you have natal energy there, that is an activation point for you. There's something that's going to occur connected to that planet, connected to that area of life, that's going to propel your destiny, right? And it's the part of life that kind of keeps us on our toes, because we never really know where we're heading, but we always got to be open to expanding and receiving. So getting into this topic, one of the first positions that will indicate a need for strong independence within this life naturally is going to be the north node in the first house, and other, in particular, subsequent planets in the first house, i.e. the sun in the first house, Mars, things like that. But different combinations can represent this, because the first house is about self-projection. So there's an aspect of the being, the individuality, that really needs to come across here. And through that, one gains more conscious awareness of how they can affect change via the self. We can go with the north node here, because whatever sign the north node ends up in, that is the quintessential example of coupling those qualities with your sun sign. And that is how you get more refined, unique individuals. As someone who's a Gemini sun with a north node in Capricorn, I understand how that north node contributes to me being the individualized Gemini that I am. So we can look at the north node in the first place as like, wherever my sun is, I have to combine these particular characteristics with that to achieve a greater essence or mastery of oneself. A dope one that we could always combine with less is like Cancer and Sagittarius, which are naturally 150 degrees quincunx. Doesn't really match up per se, right? But there's a beautiful connection here. And it's simple, that as long as you embrace expansion within life, and there's a desire to create culture or be a part of culture, one will always have an emotional connection somewhere. And now, if the north node ends up in the first house in Cancer, that's like, this is going to reflect someone who themselves has to go out there and forge emotional connections with life that enable them to live and embody their truth. If this north node is in Sagittarius, okay, and this sun ends up in Cancer, in this case, that would be the 8th house. There's a transformation that's going to occur in how one approaches life. They'll transform more into the Sagittarius archetype, or feel more emotionally connected to life once they've activated that north node in the first. So it's always a combination of energies that is going to help us find fulfillment. But the important thing is the conscious awareness that one develops from the cultivation of the sign. Okay. And so there's a certain pride that comes with North Node in the first, and who you are and how you're embodying. I've seen like a lot of times where people are mostly Neptune, but Neptune in the first is one where it's like, I'm going to treat my body like a piece of art. Okay. And I'm going to experiment with different facets of my body. So I may change a lot within life, but I take pride in those changes. You understand? And that could be set for a Pisces rising as well. Okay. So another position that forces us to really take control over our lives, individuality, independence is going to be Saturn in the 4th house. Now, this is a position that it requires constantly working at it or constantly striving. The worst thing you could do with Saturn in the 4th house is be content with the conditions in which you're given. Because more times than not, the individuals being born into conditions that they need to transcend or rework. There's a certain conditioning that one may absorb, ways of thinking that through other points in the chart, your Jupiter, your Sun, you redirect that energy. You teach yourself to be better. So how I see it is like people with Saturn in the 4th house, they either become very relentless within their pursuits of security, and remember it's opposite the 4th house, so it's going to lead to more career-oriented people, or you have those who settle, and ultimately Saturn in the 4th, the individuality isn't honed and taken advantage of and accepted. One becomes kind of like a karmic statistic. You can fall prey to particular themes that have others have in your family, and that could be through things like parenthood, marriage, relationships, being overly committed, all of that. So with Saturn in the 4th house, we really find that in order to cultivate the independence, there's a restriction, a limitation that we have to have with the family unit, which ultimately that may be you being perceived as being selfish. But you know what? The results speak for themselves. So I always tell people with Saturn in the 4th, if you've gotten to your Saturn return and life hasn't allowed you to expand out of that immediate environment, you taking it upon yourself and saying like, I don't want to be in this environment anymore. I'm taking myself somewhere else, right? That is going to be the activation of the energy. But most people, it's like, well, that requires resources. Well, that's where it comes back to Saturn and work and, having to set yourself apart and, you take independence. So a chief lesson here, and some of these themes carry over to Saturn in the 2nd too. Part of the lesson is about like financial responsibility, but it's really just about taking control over the type of life you want to have for yourself, the emotional connections you want to have. And sometimes you'll be around negative patterns that you have to choose to take yourself away from, right? So Saturn in the 4th one is definitely a big one. The next position I'm going to name here deals with the same energy, which is Chiron, but I've seen it play out in different ways, and I wanted to name them both. So I've seen Chiron in the 7th and Chiron in the 12th really force these themes of having to bring karmic balance to particular areas. In the 12th house sense, it could be a number of things. In the 7th house sense, more within relationships and how we experience others. It's kind of simple. Whatever you fear is what you must go closer to. Whatever you fear or whatever uncomfortableness that may arise from what you fear is ultimately what will heal you. With Chiron in the 7th, if one grows up around constant distrust or being a victim of things they may have witnessed, you give yourself no ability to transcend that. It's like one where you have to attack it. Chiron in the 12th, if you fear like being alienated from your family or whatever area, right? Because it's fears, it's what's coming from the unconscious. So as a result, you do things that sabotage other areas to shy away from that. There comes a point in time where you have to acknowledge the pattern and say like, damn, I have to face my fear of not being liked. And ultimately what you're going to find is like, that is what's needed to affect the change. So within both these positions, I feel like there's a certain responsibility that one has to have, like there's a karmic responsibility to yourself. So this could even be like on a health level, right? Being born into a family where health is a thing, and it's like, damn, I have to proactively choose to make better decisions within this area. I can't be ignorant towards it. Okay. So both those areas with Chiron kind of demand some seriousness. What I've seen a lot with specifically men with Chiron in the seventh is either like if one wasn't raised with their father or had own father issues, it's either I'm all the way in, like I want to be like a super dedicated dad and have mad kids, or like, nah, I think I'll put it off, right? But ultimately, a lot of times I think the emotional fulfillment lies within eventually, like having the child and stuff like that. So that's one to keep in mind. Lastly, a position that is going to require real independence, and I mentioned this house earlier, Sun in the second house. Now, with Sun in the second house, Venus, the natural ruler of this house, is going to give you insight into how the rest of the story is playing out. And then sextile to this is the fourth house. So the moon in our fourth house is going to give us some insight. I give an example of like in the sun in like fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sag. You may be born into a family where you're the one who's meant to be the financial breadwinner, or you're the one in, let's say with Sagittarius, that's meant to initiate or get everyone on accord spiritually, right? By presenting new perspectives or saying like, yo, let's get serious about us healing this particular shit. There's a responsibility or so. Here's the practical part I always tell my students with astrology. I pay attention to the sociological factors of these things. So when someone is like a Sun in the second house, I want to know what number, what sibling are you? Are you the oldest? Are you the middle? Are you the youngest? Because that influences the values in which you inherit and ultimately like what's expected of you. So naturally, the oldest with this position, you're going to have to do more, or more is going to be expected of you, whether you're man or woman, right? If you're the middle, you may make efforts to be individual or take charge, but you don't feel like it's fucking respected or it's seen. If you're the youngest, you might naturally just be in your own world, or you might avoid, depending the condition. That's why I said other factors will matter. But the chief lesson here is like, however you, or whatever area you take control of life in, you feel that validation of your independence. All right. So this was my interpretation of placements that force you to grow up or take control of your individuality. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Feel free to check out my website, GeminiBrown.com, my book, my projects. Till next time.